Welcome, everyone. My name is Richard Ron. I'm a principal with the Leonardo Group Americas, here in the U.S., located in Boulder, Colorado, home of the University of Colorado. And what we're going to talk about here is lean, or what we're calling mixed model business strategy. So strategy is something that is not talked about too often when we're talking about lean. But it needs to be talked about more, and that's the purpose of this webinar. So let's get going. The agenda for the webinar, and by the way, I'm trying to get this to fit in an hour, so you can plan accordingly. Good evening, good morning. Going to give you the backstory in terms of this whole concept of business strategy, how I got interested in this, was exposed to it, thinking of lean manufacturing as a business strategy. And then we'll define some of the terms. What do we mean by strategy? What do we mean by mixed model manufacturing? And then we'll get into this main heart of the presentation, which was 4 reasons why people buy from you. And we'll look at mixed model manufacturing or lean manufacturing in the light of each of those 4 reasons. I'm going to put a chat up here on the screen. I'm going to activate a chat, if I can. Sorry, not a chat, a poll. I'm going to start it. So as I'm talking, why don't you take a look at that? It should be on your screen right about now. Just to give us some idea of where you're coming from, where your background is. And I'll come back to the results here. I'll end the poll in just a little while, and we'll see where you all are from in terms of your experience with this subject. Right, so backstory. TPS stands for Toyota Production System. DFT stands for Demand Flow Technology. And my introduction to lean was through the gate of lean, of demand flow technology. So at that time, I'm kind of dating myself, but at that time, lean wasn't even a term that was used. So there were things like just in time, that was a common expression, or world-class manufacturing. But lean itself hadn't come into common usage quite yet. But DFT was a version of the Toyota Production System, but it was kind of westernized or Americanized. And during the late 80s and 90s, the decade of the 90s, DFT was quite a powerful thing. And a lot of huge companies, including General Electric and John Deere, were adopting DFT as basically their improvement strategy. And so I joined that company. I was trained by that company. And then I joined them afterwards. Was so impressed that I joined the company. And it was based here in Colorado, so that was convenient. Didn't have to move. And started becoming a DFT consultant. And one of the things that we did in terms of selling, marketing DFT, was that we were promoting it as a total business strategy. We had a couple of keywords or slogans related to DFT, including it was data-based methodology, scientifically based methodology, and then total business strategy. And the idea here was to present it, which was not untrue, present it as a strategy that the entire company could adopt. So it wasn't just for operations. It wasn't just for manufacturing folks. It could impact all of the corporation or all of the company. And that's how we wanted to present it, and that's how we wanted to teach it. So it was even so widely accepted at that time, DFT, as a buzzword, as a term for what we now call lean manufacturing, that there's a video, and you can find it on YouTube. Just search for Jack Welch DFT, and you'll find a short video that we promoted like crazy in terms of our own promotion of DFT. It's a video of Jack Welch giving a talk to General Electric people. And he's saying something like, DFT is a total business strategy, and it impacts everything that we do, from the shop floor to the front offices to the, et cetera. So it was quite a powerful promotion tool for us at the time. Now, right now, today, in the year 2024, we have a couple terms that we use for process improvement, and especially as it impacts manufacturing, but lots of other industries as well. So we have lean, or lean manufacturing. So lean hospitals, is another big one. And then we have SS, or Six Sigma. So Six Sigma is what pushed DFT out of the spotlight at General Electric when Jack Welch got sold on the idea that Six Sigma was going to be the new strategy for the company. So DFT remained in some pockets, but Six Sigma became the raging thing back in the 90s. And then we have what we're now calling mixed model manufacturing. So mixed model manufacturing is, you could think of it as a subset of lean manufacturing with a heavy focus on industrial engineering. And we like to think of mixed model manufacturing as really the foundation. You've seen this image of the house of lean, where they have all the different tools and aspects of lean. And at the bottom, the foundation, are some of the things you really have to start with and you really have to get good at, because you can't build the house on a weak foundation. So think of MMM, mixed model manufacturing, as the foundational kind of methods and concepts for lean, and also probably the source of most of the benefits of lean. And I know Taiichi Ono, one of the founders of the Toyota system, once was asked, well, what is this Toyota production system all about? And he kind of laughed and he said, well, if you want a simple explanation, just think of it as a Toyota-style industrial engineering. And that's kind of how we think of mixed model manufacturing. So lean is a big universe of all kinds of tools and approaches and philosophies and practices and methods. But MMM is a piece of that, but we regard it as a foundational piece, or maybe the most important piece, because you can't build things like Hoshin Kanri or Obeya or Visual Workplace or a lot of these great tools that we think of as part of the lean methodology on top of a shaky foundation. You can try, but you're not going to get the benefits that you would expect, and you're probably going to be disappointed, right? Next definition is, what is the strategy? So this is pretty simple. Strategy is just a plan of action. This comes out of the dictionary, basically, this definition. A plan of action or a policy designed to achieve a major or overall aim. So when it comes to business, we can really summarize the goal of business pretty simply as well. It's the idea that you're providing a product or a service that people want to buy. And so you're creating some kind of value for people, right, that they consider important. And in exchange, they're going to give you money. And so you're forming an organization that delivers that value. In exchange, you get money. And then hopefully you can hire people, you can pay people, you can keep this enterprise, this business going over the long term by continually improving those products and those services and building new customers and continuing on. Now, nothing lasts forever, but the goal here is, to have an organization that is successful enough at offering value and getting paid so that it lasts for a long time. And as we know, if you looked at the data, most business startups don't last a long time. Most of them don't last beyond, a few years, really. So that's the major aim, is to be able to offer value in the form of a service or in the form of a product that people will pay money for in exchange. Now, in terms of this idea of business strategy, this is a great book. I'd suggest you maybe look into it. And there's a whole section here on an interview after Taiichi Ono retired from Toyota, where he maybe was more free to talk and share some of his thoughts. And I'll be giving you a link to this presentation, so you don't have to write all this stuff down, to a PDF that you can download. But basically, the essence of what Taiichi Ono had to say was that his vision of the strategy for what we now call the Toyota production system, or Lean, was the idea of a river. So he describes it here. He says, I had a vision of a fast and even flowing, so smooth flowing river where there are no dams or obstructions. And of course, the water in the river are the products, right? Material. And it's flowing evenly and smoothly from start to finish, like this stream in a river. So he started trying to develop that vision within Toyota. It wasn't easy. People were not easily convinced that this is what he wanted to do. And so really, when you look at it, a lot of the tools that were developed back in the early days of the Toyota production system, like Kanban, pull systems, a lot of the methodologies were designed to smooth out that flow. And that flow in this case would be material, right? All the way from outside suppliers coming into the factory and then flowing to the end of the line and to the customer. And so all the efforts, at least from Taiichi Ohno's point of view, were made to make that a better functioning, performing river. And that's different from the idea of lean, as lean is basically a methodology to eliminate waste. That's a common definition of lean. If you Google what is lean, that's probably what you're going to see. That's the definition you're going to see. But in this case, that's not true. What's true is we're trying to design a river system that is a flow system or flow manufacturing system, and eliminating waste is a part of it, but it's not the goal. It's a way of improving that river flow. That's a very different way, I think, of thinking about what is lean all about, and it's not the common understanding. So share that with you. Let's take a look at the poll. I'll reset it or end it, but let's see, 20% of you watching now said, MMM, what is that? Okay, well, welcome. We'll be talking about that. And then 40% of you have a general idea. And then a third of you, which is a pretty high percentage, that's great, have been to some kind of formal training. So you're pretty well familiar with this. And then 6% of you said, yeah, basically this is how we do things. Whether we call it MMM, mixed modeling or not, that's kind of how we run things. That's great. So it's a pretty experienced audience, actually. So if we're trying to design, if the strategy, the business strategy is to design a river system, and admittedly, not everyone's agreed on that, but let's, for the sake of discussion, agree that that's what we want to try to do, then what can get in the way of that? So we have a picture of a dam, but what is going to obstruct the flow of the river? Well, waste, obviously, the 7 wastes of the Toyota production system. All these things are sources of delay and defects and rework and obstructions, right, to the flow. So I think we can pretty easily agree on that. And related to that is the idea of quality problems. So quality problems will drive either rework or scrap, and both of those are serious impacts on the ability to just flow without obstruction, without delays, into the hands of our customer. Third point, again, these are all kind of interconnected, but lack of pull in production and in our supply chain. So in other words, we're trying to schedule or plan based on a computer algorithm what to buy, et cetera, and then reality changes, and then we have excess inventory or we don't have enough. And so the idea here as part of this river is to be able to pull. In the case of a river, gravity is pulling the river right towards the ocean. But in this case, we want to have signals and methods to be pulling materials and work from all the way from outside suppliers into the factory and then down to the end. Another obstruction to the river is what I'm calling human development. So people need to be able to execute and have constancy of purpose in terms of making all this happen, or training, if you want to put it that way. And so that can be a weakness. And then the last thing, which again is not talked about often enough, but within a lean environment, you need enough water in the river. So water would be customers and business, right? And volume, demand. So it's hard. I think it's hard to implement lean in a case where you have inconsistent or lack of enough demand. Either because if you don't have enough demand, you don't have enough money, right? Enough capital and infusion of money to keep the whole thing flowing smoothly. So related to not enough customers would be the idea of not a strong enough product offering. The value that we're offering maybe is not strong enough. So one of the goals at Toyota, and again, Taiichi Ohno said this explicitly. He said he realized that just being lean or flowing was not enough. We needed to grow the company to a big enough size to make this whole thing work. And that's what I'm addressing in this last bullet. So basically, in summary, our strategy then is to develop a pull system or a flow manufacturing system, and all of these aspects of lean are in service of that. as opposed to the goal is to eliminate waste, for example. Eliminate waste will help improve the flow. Okay, so when we say total, let's explore that for a minute before we get into the details here. So when we say total business strategy, what are we talking about? What is being impacted? Well, it needs to be all departments in a company, all areas of the company, including all the support organizations. So in a perfect world, we have sales and marketing, you have finance, accounting, you have logistics, you have supply chain, purchasing, all the kind of the front end marketing, sales and marketing, all the front end processes also need to be in their own way connected to this objective, right, of building a flow system. And then, extremely important, we need to go beyond the walls of the factory. I would say that in our experience at Toyota, one of the biggest differentials that they have is an extremely strong supply chain outside of the walls of the factory, which is not an easy thing to develop. And it's especially difficult if your suppliers are all over the world, which in many cases they are. But they've done a uniquely good job of developing their worldwide supply chain, at least with the Toyota plant that we're most familiar with, which is Toyota Material Handling in Columbus, Indiana. So they have basically a river flowing from Japan to Indiana, and then from a whole network of suppliers within the US, domestic suppliers, flowing on a daily basis. And that's not something you can develop overnight, or it takes a long time. It takes years, and it takes a lot of supplier development as well to get them to the point where an outside company can be responding to these signals in a very flexible and quick way. That's a very important aspect of the idea of a total business strategy. We want to have a strategy that has a measurable impact on sales. So it's not just a cost-cutting strategy, where we're reducing costs. We want to have an impact on generating new customers and building market share. That's an important. Now, all this is not going to happen without leadership from the top. So unless your top management is bought into and educated in this idea of a flow system or river system, and again, this didn't happen automatically anywhere. It did not happen automatically at Toyota. It took Taiichi Ohno decades to build kind of a consensus, but seems to be reasonably strong now. And one way you can kind of test if your top management, C-suite, are on board or understand the flow manufacturing strategy is to ask yourself if they can actually teach Lean. Because a lot of upper management folks are they got to where they are by being pretty good at talking the talk, but can they walk the walk? So I've seen many cases where upper management can give great pep talks on Lean, but they would not be able to teach at any level of detail what it's all about, right? Teach the actual line design methods or Kanban methods, but at Toyota, they can. At Toyota, they can. So that's one way to separate the wheat from the chaff, is to ask yourself if they can actually teach these subjects. And then the last point I wanted to make in terms of a total business strategy is that everything is subject to declining. The center will not hold. That was a poem. I can't remember. It was C.S. Lewis. I don't know. The center cannot hold. So no matter how vigorous your Lean efforts are, you need to be thinking long term. So how do we make sure that everyone's trained, or I even like the term brainwashed, right? Brainwash everyone in the Lean or mixed model manufacturing methodology. And then how do we make sure that as people retire, as people leave, as we have normal turnover, how do we make sure that everything moves forward? Because if we don't think about that and have a plan in place, it's really not going to keep moving forward. It's going to fall apart, and it happens all too often. And that would be a terrible shame. Okay, so let's go on. Now, last comment is when we say dominate your market with this strategy, is that being over the top, hyperbolic? Well, maybe, but let's look at a couple examples. The obvious one I keep referencing because they're really the gold standard is Toyota. So Toyota, the Toyota production system, they've been doing this for a while. And currently today, right, at the moment, they are number one in unit sales in the world in terms of cars. They're number one in reliability ratings, especially the Lexus line, most reliable product. They are the number one wealthiest car maker in terms of cash, they have available. And for Toyota Material Handling, TMH, they are the number one market share in North America for the past 24 years straight. So not too bad, right, results. But leaving Toyota aside, are there any other examples? Well, John Deere has been a long-term client of my original company, the DFT company, called JCIT, and afterwards with us, Leonardo Group. So what they're practicing is, they wouldn't say that they're doing lean per se, or the Toyota production system. They have their own name for it, the John Deere production system. But really, they're doing a version of mixed model manufacturing that we taught to them, and we're still, engaged with them. So how's John Deere doing? Well, they're number one in sales of farm equipment worldwide. Number one. There are, in terms of units, there are some companies, I believe in India, that make a small little tractor. So if we leave those aside, because they can make a lot of those, almost like a home implement, but they're for very small farms in India. But if we leave those out, then number one in sales and farm equipment worldwide, certainly in the US, number one, and in all of their markets, because John Deere has factories all over the world, South America, North America, Europe, Asia. They're seeing market share growth. So not just overall market growth, but market share growth in all of those. So pretty good, we could find lots of other examples, but basically if the strategy being embraced at a company-wide level, then the results tend to be pretty good. No guarantee, right? One thing about both these companies is that they have good products, and we'll talk about that as well. So they have value that they're actually selling. Now, if you want to implement mixed model manufacturing, our piece of it, what we teach, we have some roadmaps that we teach. We're not going to get into these roadmaps here in this webinar. This is a 3-day workshop on this one roadmap that we teach at Toyota. I'll share a little bit about that with you. But we have another roadmap similar with the issue of material flow, which we teach in a 3-day workshop as well. So there are 6 days of training that we could be spending, time we could be spending on just these two roadmaps. But I just wanted to alert you to the fact that there is a methodology, not just a philosophy. There's a recipe that you can follow to actually make this happen. Last point I want to make before we get into the details here, I'm watching the clock too, is if you're not familiar with W. Edwards Deming, you should be. If you are, then you know what I'm talking about. And he has his famous 14 points that he made. Now, Deming was one of the original inspirations for the Toyota production system and for Japan in general in terms of their recovery from World War II. And in fact, the most prestigious prize for manufacturing excellence in Japan is the Deming Prize, if you can believe that. So Deming is, they say it's hard to be a prophet in your own country. So Deming is known here, but he's not nearly as famous as he is in Japan. Every year there's a Deming Prize. It's almost like the Oscars, right? And people watch it, and it's a lot of excitement around the Deming Prize every year in Japan. So in terms of his 14 points, his point number 1 was create constancy of purpose towards improvement of product and service with the aim of becoming competitive and to stay in business. That's what I was mentioning earlier with longevity of this strategy, and to provide jobs. So I don't think too many companies think of themselves as their goal is to provide jobs for people, but it's more the result of having value and having customers and having a need for people. I don't think companies do not hire people just to provide a job. Maybe the government does that, I'm not sure. But companies basically hire people because they have a need, right? They need help. They have work. Now, why do they have work? They have work because they have a valuable product or service that people want to buy. In order to service that demand, they need more people, right? That's the idea. So it's a pretty simple idea, right? that I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar. You build a business that provides a product or service to people that people are willing to pay for or that they value, and they give you money, right? And it's all like a wheel that keeps moving forward. That's a great thing about it. So talking about people giving you money, there are four, related to business strategy here, there are four big reasons why people would give you money as a business. Number one is to stay out of trouble. I used to call this stay out of jail, but that is a little bit hyperbolic. So stay out of trouble is one reason. So maybe they don't love giving you money, but they're willing to do it because the value you offer to them is going to keep them out of trouble in one way or another. Second reason is to have a better life. I mean, that's where most of our money goes as individuals, is to have a better life. And then the third reason is to make more money. So I'll give you $1 and I get $5 back. That's a worthwhile investment, right? Make more money. And then the fourth is how we usually think of lean manufacturing as a way to save money, right? To be more efficient, to cut costs, to eliminate waste. That's typically the domain of what we traditionally think of, conventionally think of as lean manufacturing. So we have externally facing considerations from a customer point of view, and then we have how can mixed model manufacturing address these issues internally as well, within the four walls of our company. That's what we're going to get into in this webinar. All right, so let's start with the first one, stay out of trouble. So what do we mean by that? Well, there could be some services you're willing to pay for to keep them out of trouble, out of jail, possibly. So legal services. So do we love paying money to lawyers? No, probably not, but we gotta, right? Sometimes you have to, not just for criminal reasons, but for tax reasons and business, requirements, regulations reasons, et cetera. So we have legal services, we have accounting, financial services with CPAs and bookkeepers. Do we love paying bookkeepers? Maybe not so much, but you gotta, right? Keep track of things and so on. And then we have services related to healthcare we're willing to pay for. Do we love paying our doctors? Probably not that much, but again, stay out of trouble. And then maintenance kinds of investments, again, to stay out of trouble. So that's on the service side. And then we have on the product side, we might have safety or OSHA, related actual requirements, things we have to buy, physical objects we need to buy to stay out of trouble that we don't love having, we don't love paying for, but you gotta, right? And so there are those things as well. Medical equipment, for example. And then we have staying out of trouble by having a responsive supply chain and speed to market. So this is where mixed model manufacturing could have an impact. In other words, not being late, being able to deliver our value might be reliant on things that we're not wild about paying for, but we have to, because if we don't, we're going to get into trouble. All right. Now, shift your view here from a customer-oriented view to internally. How can we stay out of trouble within the company using mixed model manufacturing or lean manufacturing methods? Well, one of them is this idea of poka-yoke or error proofing. So we'd like to look at the work we have to do and error proof it, because clearly errors create problems, right? Get us into trouble, either serious trouble or just disappointed customers trouble. So we want to have a process that allows us to document and error proof the work that we do internally, not just in manufacturing, but all the departments should have a way of doing that. There may actually be serious legal risks related to defects and mistakes, like tell me about it, Boeing. So we don't, there's some mistakes that maybe you just have disappointed customers. Others can send you to jail, right? So medical products, avionics, aviation, all kinds of different options there. And then the last thing internally is we want to shorten the critical path time. That's our overall, as we mentioned earlier, our overall business strategy, the river concept. And so there may be ways to, or there are ways to use the mixed model manufacturing strategy to help contribute to that. So let's look at a couple actual examples here for error proofing, again, within the four walls of our company. So the idea here with error proofing, the most basic approach to error proofing is to document the work through the standard work definitions. So in other words, document the work steps and the work times and the quality risks of the work. You are probably familiar with this idea of FMEA. So again, that's related to this concept as well. So we have work steps and where are the potential quality risks. So when we document standard work, it's not just the work steps. We want to look at, could someone do this step wrong? And if they can do it wrong, we want to have a fix for it. And hopefully that fix is error proofing. That means we make it impossible to create that error by redesigning the process or providing tooling or fixturing. So it's not an inspection. Poka-yoke is not an inspection step. It's a fix. It's a process improvement, right, to avoid that error altogether. So various ways of doing that, but that's certainly our number one option. Now, if we want to reduce errors and we can't actually permanently fix the error, the risk is still there, either because it's too expensive to fix it or not possible to fix it. So the second option for error proofing our work is to inspect it. But here the idea is not to inspect it with an inspector looking over your shoulder, another person looking over your shoulder, make sure you did it right. Ideally, the people doing the work should be able to check their work, and we call that check, do, check. So the basic strategy here is when work comes to you in an assembly line kind of environment, you would check the work coming to you before you do any of your own work, because an error might have happened upstream and gotten through. So the first check in the check, do, check is check the work coming to you. Not everything, but the quality critical steps that might be at risk. So you check the work coming to you when you're satisfied. And again, these checks should be pretty quick, right? Fast. Then you do your work. And then before you allow the unit, if you're working in an assembly line, to pass to the next station, or the paperwork, if you're doing paperwork kind of work, before you allow it to go to the next step in the process, you check your own work. And the reason we have two checks is that if you're checking your own work, that's not as good as having a fresh set of eyes check it. So the first check you did is the fresh set of eyes. You didn't do that work, so your eyes are fresh. But when you check your own work, there's more of a tendency to overlook mistakes you may have made. So we like to have a double check, basically. And this is very simple. It's a little bit more time, but this is a very simple thing to implement and can be extremely powerful. We had a client where the workforce out on the floor started referring to this as kind of a magic technique. I mean, they were speaking, facetiously, but because just by implementing this technique, their workmanship-related errors dropped like a rock. Just by doing this, it doesn't cost anything other than a little bit more time. So that's great. Now, when we talk about checking work or inspecting, like check, do, check, one of the risks of that is you check, but you don't really check, right? You're not focused, especially if the work is somewhat repetitive. After a while, you get dull, you start not seeing clearly. And so as a way to supplement the check, do, check method, we have something called touch for quality that we recommend. So the idea with touch for quality is that you would either just touch with your finger, if you can do that, physically touch the inspection point. So you're supposed to do a check, you touch that point on the product with a finger or with a pen or with some kind of touch device, chopstick. So there's a physical action required. And the beauty of that is that not only does that help focus the mind more clearly by touching, but also someone else can see you, watch you, and at least they can't tell what's in your mind, but at least see that your hand went out with a touching device and touched that inspection point. So it's possible to verify that these checks are actually being done. Now, we even take it a step further by sometimes not just touching, but marking with a pen or a chalk or paint, if that's allowable. And a couple case histories for you. Trinity Industries makes, it's a Dallas-based company. They make rail cars. And I had a project myself with them in Mexico. They had quite a large factory with a lot of welding. And so you'd weld a section of this big tanker or rail car, grain bin, a lot of different styles. And then the welder would be asked to check his or her, usually his, welding seam before it would go to the next station. But not just check, but take a piece of chalk and mark it. Mark, I checked my own. Then when the rail car would get rolled to the next station, the next worker could actually see that there was a mark here. So again, we can't tell what goes on in people's brains, but we know that they marked it with a piece of colored chalk. Now, and then so on and so forth. As the product would go down, it was going down a set of rails, actually. So what's the deal with the chalk? Well, it helps focus. It helps the next person know that, hey, at least in theory, this person checked their welding seam. And the reason that was allowed is that at the end, the whole thing gets painted, right? It gets sandblasted and painted. So the chalk goes away. But at least during that process, there was a visual signal. Now, I mentioned here aerospace because aerospace and other industries do this as well. Again, speaking to you, Boeing, where you do work, and if it's going to be covered up later on or can be removed, you can mark, and they do this in aerospace, they mark parts, sometimes with a little paint gun or paint pen, where you can, like you're torquing something down. How do we know that that was torqued? Well, you don't, right? And you don't have to you don't want to retorque it to check it. So there's a torque that's done, and then there's a little paint dot that's put on that spot. And we had this recent thing with the door coming off a Boeing plane. You remember that? So maybe something as simple as this would have been a help to know, right? You torque down that bolt, and then you mark it. Now, in the future, here's an interesting thing for you. In the future, and we're actually talking to a company that's working on this and delivering it, I believe, we could have something like AI inspection. So check-to-check could actually be done by a camera connected to an AI system that's been trained, but is actually looking at the work and verifying that the work steps were done in the right sequence and completed and not left out, not skipped, etc. So it's like an AI human inspector kind of looking over your shoulder. So I don't know how people feel about that, but that's kind of coming, especially for critical work like we're talking about with Boeing, where you'd have some AI assistance. And then the last thing here on error proofing, what to do when a defect is found. Well, again, we're talking about mixed model methods, right? Techniques that are part of this practice. So what happens if you find a mistake? Well, normally, if you find a mistake that happened at the previous station, that unit would be returned to that previous station. Again, if possible, kind of depends on the size of the product and how all this is arranged. But you'd want to have the person that did the mistake, that created the error, fix it themselves. And that would be a good reminder for them not to do it again. Probably it's not going to happen anytime soon. And if you're keeping score, so to speak, on defects, there's no penalty for that kind of step because it was found, right? Yes, a defect occurred, but we caught it, and it was returned and fixed at the place where the work was done. So there's no penalty. Now, second thing is, if you find a mistake at your own station, right? So you did a self-inspection. I did the work, I checked my own work, and whoops, I made a mistake. Again, I would fix it, and there's no penalty because it didn't get out of my station, right? I was able to find it myself. However, if a mistake gets through two checks, remember the check-to-check, so we had two sets of eyes, and a mistake or defect gets past two people, and it gets caught later on. Hopefully, the worst case is if the customer finds it, but even if it gets caught downstream somewhere, then there is a penalty. Now, what does it mean? What does a penalty mean? Well, if you have some kind of bonus system attached to production, then one option for the penalty is that from a bonus point of view, that unit doesn't count. Now, the customer maybe got it, right? It got finished, but from a bonus or incentive point of view, it's deducted. So that's a reasonably significant incentive for people to pay attention to what they're doing. Because if you create a defect and it gets through, it doesn't just affect you. These bonuses are typically team bonuses. So you're not just impacting yourself, you're impacting the entire team, right? So it can be pretty effective that way without being too harsh. Last point is pulling the cord or end-on. If you identify a problem, this is incredibly powerful at Toyota, where there's a hierarchy of response. The first level of response might be your team members or your team leader comes in. If it can't be addressed there, supervisor might be the next level, third level might be engineering, but the response is fast. Something needs to be addressed, and that's an incredibly powerful practice as well to use. All right, let's go on. Looks like we got about 20 minutes left here, so I'll try to get this done for you. How to have a better life. Reason number 2 for people to give us money, so they can have a better life. So buying things that we need is the number 1 place where our money goes. By that I mean housing, food, insurance, clothing, all those things, entertainment. So some things are absolute necessities like food and housing. Other things are discretionary, but those are the things where people spend their money. And under the discretionary spending, there'd be luxuries. You might even consider buying a Starbucks coffee as not a necessity, right? But a nice little treat that you might give yourself, or luxury. Also, people like spending money on life experiences. That means like travel, going to exotic locations, going to really interesting events, concerts, things like that, where you don't end up with some kind of product that you put in your garage, but it's an experience in your life. And also educational experiences. People are interested in spending money on that. So let's focus on within the company, what is the mixed model manufacturing strategy or approach when we deal with employees or people? So one of the interesting options, and this was incredibly powerful in terms of having a better life. This was incredibly powerful at my first lean company that I worked for, JCIT. Is they were a consulting company, and so there was a heavy interest in making sure that the consulting team was up to speed, right, with their skills, because what we were selling were classes, training and implementation, coaching or consulting. So you wanted to make sure that your consulting team was, at a high skill level. And so there were all kinds of certifications that you could earn if you were part of the consulting staff, which I was. And some are harder and some are easier, right? So some have more points assigned to them, associated with them, and some had fewer points. But the idea was to incentivize the consulting team to learn new things, right, and grow and actually be more valuable to the company. And so as you earn points, it didn't happen every time you got certified in a new skill, but when you reach certain bands, certain pay bands of points, you would get a raise, instant raise. So if you're really gung-ho to improve your financial compensation, you would work hard to learn new skills. And for most of us, that worked out really well, financially and building our skill base quickly. And so this can be done in a company as well with the workforce. And we encourage companies, our clients, to do that, to have part of people's compensation. If developing new skills is important to you, then offer some kind of percentage, not 100%, but some kind of percentage of their compensation related to skills. So as people get skilled in more workstations, for example. So if I'm an operator on an assembly line, if I only know station 10, okay, that's worth something. But if I know station 9 and 11, that's worth more. If I know 8 and 12, that's worth even more. We like to typically, in an assembly line, certify people in a band, right, in a block, because we'd like them to be able to move, right, and work at more than one place. So that can be, incredibly incentivizing. For a consulting company, it's critically important. For a manufacturing company, it's also very important, and we'll talk about that in a second as well. So this worked out incredibly well. It wasn't all our pay related to skills. There was a base pay, so we weren't afraid about losing our house, right? There was a regular, in our paycheck every 2 weeks, we'd expect a certain amount, but then a percentage above that, which is a pretty high percentage, was related to skills. In a factory, probably not so high percentage related to skills, but still something would be incredibly important. A couple of the thoughts on respect for people. People having a better life within our company, within our manufacturing company. The idea here is a misunderstanding of respect is that we treat people nicely. And that's okay. And that's a good thing to treat people nicely, but that's not really what's meant by respect. So we have an idea of grandmotherly compassion. Actually, the Tibetans talk about, the Tibetan Buddhists talk about grandmotherly compassion. Right? Compassion is a big deal in Buddhism. And grandmotherly compassion would be like your grandmother who's very sweet and loves her grandchildren, but maybe is not that sharp in some ways. And maybe in her mind, she's being good to them, but maybe is not so good for them. Like maybe we're talking about candy and desserts and overindulgence, let's say, overindulging his or her grandchildren. So that's kind of what we mean by grandmotherly compassion. But from a Toyota production system point of view or Lean point of view, compassion or respect means respecting the people that these people are intelligent, your employees, and they can learn and they can be challenged and they can do more. So not challenging people, not thinking of them, as being able to learn and grow, and not giving them a path to actually do that and grow is considered disrespectful. So that's kind of what we're talking about. So it's not a matter of giving people an easy time. It's actually challenging them because you're respecting them in terms of their capabilities as human beings. The other comment here in terms of respecting people is having a transition strategy within a company so that we understand, or people understand, that there's a place for them to grow too, right? To be able to advance. If there's no advancement, then at some point people just kind of turn off. So we want to have a clear pathway for here's your current job and here's where you could go next. But to get to this next step, here are the skills you would need to have. Here's how you need to develop yourself. Here's some people skills maybe you need. Here's some technical skills maybe you need, et cetera. And you can grow in the organization. That's incredibly powerful for people. Now, last comment here on this slide is if you do that, then it becomes harder and harder to simply hire people from the outside. Right? I'm going to hire someone to fill that slot. Because the people that you're building, that you're developing in-house, are enculturated, right? They're getting soaked in that lean culture, and that takes a long time, right? To develop people in that way. And so to think that you can just hire someone and just put them in a job at higher levels, I mean, obviously you have to hire from the outside, but you're not going to be able to hire at high levels in the company because those people don't know the culture really. And that's been a killer, in my estimation, that's been a killer to a lot of companies that have embraced a lean strategy, and then they have a new CEO come in or a new manager of the department who has either doesn't know it all or has some kind of completely different idea. And whatever was done for the last 10 years, it just goes down the drain very quickly. And so what I've seen at Toyota is that beyond a certain level, it's all in-house promotion, through the organization, because for the reason I just said, it's impossible or very difficult to maintain this kind of culture that you want to build. And building that culture is a hard thing. Right? It takes a long time. Also, changing the number of shifts has the same impact. Sometimes we talk about in Lean, well, you could just add another shift and double capacity. If you're working one shift, add another shift. But what Toyota Material Handling tends to do is add capacity, not add another shift. Because when you add another shift, you're talking about this cultural issue where you have all these people that maybe don't want to work on the second shift, and you've got to hire from the outside, and now you have a whole group of people that don't really understand, right, the culture. So that can happen as well. Okay, reason number 3, save money. I'm going to go more quickly here. I know we're running out of time. But basically, to save money is the main kind of goal, the conventional thinking goal of lean manufacturing. And how do we save money? Well, we pay less. That's one way to save money. Or more likely, we're gaining efficiency, so we're more productive. Or we're extending the product lifespan. Or we're reducing operating costs. In fact, reducing operating costs is a big differentiator, or at least they promote this at Toyota. They say, at Toyota Material Handling, if you buy a Toyota, and maybe for cars too, but if you buy a Toyota fork truck, yes, it might cost you a little bit more, but the total cost for you is less. The total cost of ownership. Why? Because it's more reliable, maybe fuel efficiency is better, all these factors add up. So if you look at the big picture, the total cost of a fork truck, you're going to find that the Toyota option, so they say, is less, right? So that's an important thing to do. Now, within our own factory, applying the MMM strategy, we want to make the point here that reducing cost is important, but only from the point of view of working on the river system primarily. So cost is going to come down as a result of improving the flow. When you improve the flow, your costs will go down. And so that's a different strategy than just trying to eliminate waste, because it's probably not too hard to find waste. But the question is, if I reduce that waste, is that really going to improve the flow? Or is it in a process that's not on the critical path? If you work on processes that are not on the critical path, then your total time through the river is not going to get better. It's not going to change. And this is a big point of the Goldratt theory of constraints approach to improvement. Same kind of thing, where you need to understand where the bottlenecks are and focus on those. Because if you're working on non-bottleneck improvements, yes, you will get savings, right? You'll eliminate waste, but it's not going to impact that overall flow of the river. So this is a critically important thing to understand. The other thing to understand is that Kaizen is not a strategy that's going to get you there if you have a broken process, right, or poorly designed process. So we don't want to think of Kaizen as the strategy, having a bunch of Kaizen events. There have been companies that have tried that. I guarantee you. I know who they are. I won't mention them, but they embraced these Kaizen events as their main improvement strategy. And they had example I know of hundreds of Kaizen events over a few years, and they saw very little improvement at the bottom line. And that's what the CEO said. He said, I'm investing in all this Kaizen work, but when I look at the P&L, I don't see where that's all going. And that's because they didn't have the river approach, and they were just doing lots of improvements all over the place. And this is actually Taiichi Ohno's strategy in leading Western companies, American companies, and European companies astray. In that article I showed you at the beginning of the webinar, one of the things he said was, hey, we didn't want to be competing with American companies and European companies, but we couldn't just hide what we were doing completely. So what I did was I came up with a strategy to just confuse everyone. And I confused everyone by saying, the Toyota system is all about eliminating waste. Because I knew when they heard that, they'd go, oh, yeah, that makes sense, and go off and start working on improvements everywhere and not focusing on the river. So you can read about that in that initial article. Now, two biggest opportunities to improve, though, when we're talking about cost and productivity. One is called flexing, and another one that's common for lean companies is frequent line rebalancing. So let me address those quickly. So flexing means moving. So if you have a workforce that can move to where the work needs to be done because they're trained, to move and work in various areas, then you're going to get a productivity gain. Because what that allows you to do is meet your demand without changing the line, right? Without having to change the physical line. You can reduce the output by simply taking people out. And the people that are remaining can flex. That's incredibly powerful. Now, you can go up to fully staffed line. That's your maximum capacity. But you can design a line that's over-designed, let's say, and give you a huge range of flexibility. There's a book on that called Self-Balancing Processes, which I recommend, Gordon Garan. That's available on Amazon if you want to read more about it. But the productivity gains can be huge depending on where you are today. If you visually look at your assembly lines today, and there's a lot of waiting, this can be really huge. In his experience, Gordon Grant says rarely less than 30%, which is enormous. Where else are you going to get that kind of opportunity? So flexing is often overlooked. And then frequent line rebalancing. Not everyone does this, but I know Toyota does this as well. When they need to change the output of a line, because they always run it fully staffed, they have to rebalance the line. So you have to recalculate takt time, and then you have to recalculate the number of stations you need and rebalance the flow to run at a different rate. Now, sometimes that might be less. Oftentimes it's higher rate. But in any case, you have to go through all this industrial engineering work, of redefining the work content at each station, rebalancing it, retraining people. It's enormous. And even Toyota Material Handling in Columbus does this 2 or 3 times a year. And it's like a 6 to 8 week effort, right, to rebalance the line. So what we're saying is, hey, if it's possible, don't do that. Just design for a future projected demand and then manage the actual output of the line with flexing. And it's going to be, going to save a ton of money because this is not cheap. You can imagine trying to do that. All right. Last comment. I'll make this really quick. Making more money. Last reason why people give you money is to make more money. For example, courses on how to sell, right? Well, am I going to give you money to take a course on how to sell? Because if I do that and learn how to sell, I'm going to make more money. That's great. Now, back to Lean or MMM. How does Toyota leverage their Lean initiative to sell more? Well, I think probably their main selling point, at least for me, the way I understand it and experience it, is they've developed over many years a really solid reputation for quality and dependability of the car. When you buy a Toyota, are you buying it because it's like so super high performing and sexy? Not really, right? You're buying it because part of your mind says, hey, I don't want to be repairing this all the time. And I know that this is a really reliable vehicle. It looks okay, right? It does what I need it to do. So that's kind of important, but mainly I want something that's really reliable. I don't want something breaking down. And so that's really their key selling point, I would say. Now, they sometimes have technical advances. I know that the fork trucks have a few features that other people don't have, but generally speaking, it's, hey, this is really reliable. The total cost of ownership is lower than some of these other vehicles. And as a result, then their Toyota is very close to their customer, I'd have to say. And they have this river system in place, so they're able to produce products that come off the end of the line, super reliable, super dependable, and at low cost. Okay, relatively speaking. So I'll just leave it there. We're almost to 11. If you can stick around for another minute or two. The question here in summary is, how does your product or service for you? The question for you is, how does your product or service address the 4 motivations of how people would give you money? Do you actually have an irresistible offer? Or if you don't, how can you actually come up with one that's market disruptive? I know that Apple actually has secret groups of people that are typically given an assignment. They're given a product, like the watch. So team, here's your watch. How can you come up with something using our technology that'll totally disrupt the watch industry, right? And until they come up with something, it's kind of secret. And then they'll come out with the iWatch, right? Or the iPhone, or all the things that they've done. So if you don't have a product that people want to buy, that they're excited about, that's an issue, right? That's a problem right out of the starting gate. Lean's not going to help you too much from that point of view. So pretty important starting point. Now, in terms of embracing this river system that I've been talked about as a total business strategy, many are curious about this, but very few companies that we've been to have actually embraced this in an explicit kind of way. This is what we're going to do. We're going to reduce our lead times. We're going to reduce our response time to our customer by eliminating the waste, pulling things closer together in a pull system, all the way from outside suppliers. Who's actually doing that as a corporate strategy? Not too many people, right? So great opportunity, I would say. And the companies that do are successful, typically. but it's not easy. Right? It takes a long time. So if you're not in that situation, you say, well, they're never going to do that. Can we apply mixed model manufacturing at a lower level, simpler level? Of course, you could just do it in manufacturing or operations, right? Or in a department. There's no restriction, but of course the total benefit to the company are going to be less. And then the last thing I'd caution you about, last point here, is that all these other great tools, we're big fans of Obeya, setting up an Obeya room, having focused, cross-functional meetings, creating a learning organization through Obeya, or Hoshin Kanri having a tiered planning structure to get all the cats moving in the same direction, are all fantastic and powerful tools that need to be embraced in the future. But if you don't have the foundation of mixed model manufacturing, that is to say the lean industrial engineering approach underlying that, then you're really not going to see the benefit of these other techniques either, right? Some, yes, you're going to be maybe pleased, but you're not going to get the full benefit of all these other really neat, cool, amazing methods of lean manufacturing. So how do we do this? If you're asking yourself, how do we actually do this? And Timothy, thanks, have trained and worked in DFT, so you know what I'm talking about. So this is last week. So this is hot off the press. Here's a attractive group of people at Toyota Material Handling. So Toyota's been really great at opening their doors to us 4 times a year to teach our public classes. So people from the outside, I think at this class we had maybe 8 different companies, something like that, outside companies that sent people. And it was the material flow workshop that we did. So again, just last week. So this is the group photograph. The other class we have is line design. So line design the next line design class at Toyota, similar to the one we did last week, is on August 6th to the 8th, 2024. I have some offers here, some links that you can probably see. Let me turn those on. I think I can turn on more than one at a time, right? No? Anyway, the line design workshop is here. Hosted at the Toyota factory, the best mixed model factory that I've ever been to, I have to be honest. It's taught by either myself or Gerard Leone, the authors of the book, The Complete Guide. So it's really the roadmap, the step-by-step process for designing a mixed model line. And it includes a lot of interaction with the Toyota folks as well, 2 plant tours, Q&A sessions with what they call the ambassadors, people who know a lot about anything you'd want to ask. So there's a link here if you want to just find out more about that opportunity, leandesignstudio.com/mix-model-line-design. The other one is coming up in November. So we have two opportunities remaining in the year, and that is, let's see, remove offer. Let me put the next one up. Start offer. The next one's up, coming up in November 12th to the 14th. It's the same class we did last week, same location, same basic structure. So 2 tours and Q&A sessions, taught by the authors. That's us, myself and Gerard, of a book that's coming out here in a few months called Material Flow. And the link for information and registration is similar, leandesignstudio.com, mixed model material flow. Also, both classes include a year membership to the Lean Design Studio. And if you can hang on for 1 minute, let me tell you about that. The Lean Design Studio is our website for all things related to mixed model manufacturing. So we've been doing this for a while and developed lots of courses, done webinars, created tools, developed simulation modeling software. And during COVID, primarily, we said, okay, now we have some time available. Let's put all this online for people. And that's the Lean Design Studio. So if you want to get certified in these different topics and can't go to one of the Toyota workshops or a private workshop, that's an option for you, is to take it online, right? And take a pretty substantial final exam and earn a certificate in both those 2 subjects, line design and material flow. So all kinds of riches there, including the ability to build value stream models and test your designs in a simulation environment. All of that's included in the Lean Design Studio. So again, you can just go to leandesignstudio.com and check it out for the information page. Okay, So I'm willing to stick around. I know we went over a few minutes, but I'm willing to stick around if any of you have any questions. But that pretty much concludes this presentation. Hope you enjoyed it, and good luck. Best wishes for your future work with mixed model manufacturing. Okay. So Timothy, if you're still online, where did you get your DFT training? Oh, Renee, I'm glad you asked that. I'm making great progress on that one, Renee. I managed to get it all. I was having problem with the quiz format in the software we're using, as you experienced, where it was locking up. So I just put it all into a native WordPress format, and I've got all those questions ported over. And now the only thing remaining that I need to do before I can open it up is to just review it, just do a check, go through each question and make sure that everything's set up correctly, because I did it electronically. So I can't rely on everything came across perfectly. So I want to make sure that the questions make sense and that the answers are, correct. So I would say within the next, well, I'll tell you what, give me till Monday. There are a lot of questions. So give me until Monday to complete the check. So when you come in, I'll commit to you that when you come in on Monday morning, today's Friday, right? When you come in on Monday morning, you'll see it all available. Okay. So thanks for asking. I'm sorry it's taken so long. It just was, there were so many questions and I couldn't figure out, I was trying to get away from having to do it all manually, re-enter them into this other quiz software. And so I was successful, but it's going to take a little while. In-house in a company where you work. Okay. That's most of us. Same with me. I was in a company and I was sent to the DFT training. And that's what got me all excited about it and, got me involved with this career. Many years ago, I'll date myself by saying I went to the DFT training class in 1989. And then I was like the DFT coordinator for about 3 or 4 years within that company. And then I said, hey, this is too much fun. I need to do this full time. So in 1994, so this is the 30-year anniversary, if you can believe that. You can believe it with my gray hair, but 30 years of full-time Lean/DFT style consultant. All right, so I'm going to sign off. Thank you, everybody. Reach out to me if you have anything you think of later on you wanted to talk about. And I hope you can attend one of these workshops at Toyota. That's a life-changing experience. It really is. So if you can swing it to attend one of those, you won't regret it. It'll stay with you the rest of your career, rest of your life, actually. Okay, and maybe beyond. Okay. So long, everybody.